Hello, how are you? Today I want to tell you the story of 3 different followers here on the channel who lost a lot of weight. Some lost up to 14 pounds in a month. And the best part, no medication, no injections, no going to the gym. I'm going to tell you what each of them did, what you could put into practice in your own routine to show that sometimes small changes can really help us in our weight loss journey. Stay until the end. You won't want to miss it. Before we start, I want to ask you, are you in the process of losing weight? How much would you like to lose? Write it for me down below in the comments. And if you've already started this process and need a little push, how are you doing? Tell me everything here in the comments. I would love to see your comment. If you know someone who is going through this process, share this video. Let's expand our chain of kindness and help more people. And if you can, go ahead and leave your like, because that's really important for me here on the channel. A lot of people think like this. Patricia is going to talk about cases in which people have lost up to 14 pounds in a month. Isn't that an exaggeration? When we think about the vast majority of the population, people who are slightly overweight, we usually think of a weight loss of about 1 to 2 pounds per week. That adds up to 4 to 8 pounds in a month. The thing is, there are people who are actually at a higher degree of obesity and can lose more weight, especially in the first month, a more significant amount, like those 14 pounds that someone mentioned losing. Because it all depends on your starting weight, how your diet was before, what you changed in your eating habits, and how much you were able to lose also from fluids, glycogen, and even fat itself. So it's possible that some people can lose 14 pounds. Not everyone will get that result in the first phase, especially since sometimes there are people who only need to lose 14 pounds in total. So what I'm trying to say is that depending on your starting weight and how your diet was before, it might indeed be possible in some cases. Now, always remember not to do anything that could put your health at risk, nothing too extreme. In fact, you'll see here that the changes they made are simple but very effective, and most people can do them without too much pressure in their daily lives, making it possible to sustain the process in the long term. So, I'm going to tell you about these 3 followers, and I'm sure you're going to love it. Let's start with the idea from the first one here, what she did to achieve such great results. The first follower even joked with me that she considered herself a real snacker. She said, "I hardly ever have lunch, Patricia. When I look at my food, I don't eat a large amount. I eat little at lunch. My dinner is something really light, but I just can't lose weight." And then, when she started to analyze her routine more closely, the problem appeared. Because she spent practically the whole day snacking. You probably know someone like that. Someone who says, "I don't know why I can't lose weight, because my plate has so little food. Look at the amount of rice and beans I put here. Look at the chicken. It's very little. I'm not hungry at lunch or dinner." But when you start keeping a food diary, it might be a good idea to write things down just to track what you're eating and become more aware. You realize that you're snacking throughout the day, but so what is the main problem with that? If, after all, she was eating little at lunch and dinner, how can this snacking have such an impact? Because after all, it's just a cereal bar, a small piece of cheese, maybe some crackers. Does that really have such a big impact? It does, because first, depending on the type of food you eat, it can be very high in calories. And the second thing is, you'll be causing insulin spikes throughout the day. We know that insulin is an anabolic hormone that takes the glucose from the food we've just consumed and stores it in our fat cells, preferably in the form of triglycerides. So in addition to that, it blocks the release of stored fat. This means that while insulin levels are high in our blood, the body has difficulty accessing and burning fat stores naturally present. The body stays in an anabolic mode of storing energy instead of being in a catabolic mode of burning that energy. So, when a person is constantly snacking, insulin levels never really drop, and over time you can lose that metabolic flexibility, which is the body's ability to switch between these modes and efficiently use body fat as a fuel source. So, the change this follower made was simple, but it was powerful. She stopped snacking and started having structured meals, focusing a lot on protein and fiber. She started including more eggs, chicken, yogurt, meat, high-quality protein sources throughout the day. We know this boosts weight loss, first because of the thermic effect of food, which requires more calories for metabolism, but also because of satiety and muscle mass preservation. She also upped her fiber intake, adding plenty of chia, flaxseed, and vegetables to her daily diet. Sometimes she would have yogurt with psyllium instead of dinner, along with some fruit, and so on. We know that this also stimulates the release of certain gut hormones, like GLP-1, which we talk so much about when it comes to those weight loss pens. Obviously by comparison, right? Never saying that they are the same, but it does secrete this hormone. So, it helps signal a greater feeling of satiety to the brain. So when she stabilized her meal times and increased her intake of protein and fiber, she was finally able to extend the interval between meals, allowing her insulin to follow its natural cycle of dropping throughout the day. And the body can then start tapping into its own fat stores, using that as fuel. And she also starts eating less because she feels more satiated. The second follower has a story that many people also share. I know many cases like this of people who struggle with that ravenous hunger at night. This follower would spend the whole day eating very little, barely anything for breakfast, and a tiny lunch. Also, she had an extremely exhausting work routine, lots of traffic, commuting, and when she got home at night, the result was exactly what we already know, right? She would raid the fridge, eating much more than she wanted to. She couldn't control herself, especially since there was an abundance of tasty food at home, and she was very stressed and tired throughout the day. And from a scientific point of view, her body was actually in survival mode. Because when we go many hours without eating, without getting enough nutrients, the body increases the production of ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone. At the same time, the stress, the fatigue, this very exhausting routine of hers increased cortisol. So this combination of high ghrelin and cortisol makes the brain seek out foods with high energy density, usually rich in carbohydrates, sugar, and fat. So normally, when it finally has access to food, it will want something that is more calorie dense. Another important factor is the circadian rhythm, right? That biological clock that regulates our metabolism throughout the day. The human body was designed to receive more energy during daylight hours and to try to reduce food intake at night. So when someone spends the whole day restricting themselves, unable to eat, or saying, I'm going to go on a very restrictive diet, I'm not going to eat anything here, when night comes, the body ends up fighting against this biological clock. So actually, you get this rebound effect of eating more at a time when you shouldn't. And the solution for her was to do what we call front-loading energy. She started having a very complete lunch, really filling. She started having her breakfast, not just a coffee or a coffee with milk, something quickly while standing in the kitchen because she was always waking up late. In fact, she said she started using a lot of my jar recipes, which I have here on the channel, where you prepare the meal the night before, so it became easier for her to eat properly. She felt full, made it comfortably to lunchtime, and then she would have a well-prepared lunch. In this case, she started bringing food from home, making packed lunches. But if you also want to eat out and make good choices, that's perfect too. Protein, fiber, salad, healthy fats. Add more to your plate. Include good fats like olive oil, avocado. And then, when she was able to nourish her body better throughout the day, her blood sugar became more stable, her hormones balanced out, and by nighttime, she realized she no longer needed to compensate for that huge calorie deficit she used to have, and she was able to lose weight. Because she was able to have more control over how much and what she ate, since that can also be affected by excessive hunger. The third story was from another follower, and I think this one will surprise a lot of people because she didn't like going to the gym, didn't like exercising, and felt kind of awkward about putting on workout clothes and all that. She said, I'm going to try, instead of doing targeted physical exercise, to increase my calorie expenditure throughout the day. And this was a very smart choice on her part. In addition, she also reduced the amount of foods with a high glycemic index, like white bread, sugar, rice, crackers. These things she used to eat a lot throughout the day. And she added these exercises, this increased physical activity. It wasn't direct exercise. She didn't go for a walk, for example, or take a spinning class or do weight training. No. She started to focus more on this informal calorie expenditure. And we know that studies show that this formal exercise usually accounts for 5% to 10% of our daily expenditure of our daily routine, while these informal exercises, which are our basal expenditure from doing everyday activities, can account for up to 30% if we focus on them. This is very interesting because what did she start doing? She started walking while talking on the phone. She began parking farther from her destination. She stopped using the elevator and started taking the stairs. She played more actively with her children. So these small movements activate an important enzyme called lipoprotein lipase, which helps remove fat from the bloodstream so it can be used as a source of energy by the body. And when we sit all day, this enzyme basically goes into a resting mode. So when we move throughout the day, it starts working again. And so without doing formal workouts, without necessarily going to the gym, she increased her daily energy expenditure by a lot of calories. And this had a very important effect on her metabolism. Furthermore, we also know that people who stay more active throughout the day, who have these daily exercise pills, can really help with blood sugar control, insulin secretion, which also helps with the weight loss process in an indirect way. So, while those 3 people had amazing results, it's important to remember they were following a balanced diet. It helps to have a clear idea of what an organized routine looks like. Things like eating well, staying hydrated, getting enough sleep, and limiting alcohol consumption. So always remember that these are interesting ideas for you to put into practice, and that you can put these ideas into practice as well to achieve beneficial results. Now, if you already have a health condition, if you're concerned, if you need to lose weight very quickly because of surgery or a serious health problem, remember that this video is purely informational. And for any additional information that you need specifically for yourself, talk to your nutritionist or your doctor in your city. If you can think of 3 pillars that we can take from these ideas, basically, first focus on protein and fiber to preserve muscle mass and help you feel full for longer. Avoid losing control over your eating at night, which is where many people make mistakes, right? They do more or less some restriction during the day, and at night they can't control themselves. And the third is to stay more active, not necessarily with physical activity, but with movement throughout the day, right? Non-directed movement can help you. Remember that I have a really cool weight loss playlist here. Everyone is loving it. If you're interested, I'll leave the link for it down below. Tell me what you would change today to try to stimulate your weight loss naturally. I would love to see your comment. Remember to like the video, that helps me a lot, and share it with anyone who needs these tips. Let's expand this chain of kindness. That's what I want here with the channel. See you next time. Bye.